The night split open with a scream so raw it seemed to tear through the walls. Jennifer clutched her blanket, her heart pounding as if it might burst from her chest. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the bedroom walls, slithering like dark veins. She whispered, "Who's there?" But her voice trembled, swallowed by silence. The air grew heavy, pressing against her lungs, as though the darkness itself wanted her to suffocate. A faint scratching noise scraped along the plaster, each stroke deliberate, as if something invisible was marking her home. Jennifer thought she saw eyes glitter in the far corner, but when she blinked, they vanished. She whispered again, this time softer, "Stop watching me." A sudden knock rattled the windowpane, though no branches could reach it. Her breath came ragged, every sound amplified, every silence louder. She reached for her phone, but the screen stayed dead, black like the room. A cold whisper brushed her ear, though no one stood beside her. The house lay still after the scream, yet Jennifer could not force herself to believe it was over. Every creak of the old wood seemed sharper, every hum of silence more suffocating. She whispered, "This isn't real," trying to convince herself, but the words rang hollow. A sudden crash in the kitchen jolted her upright, her pulse hammering in her throat. She clutched her blanket tighter, afraid of stepping onto the cold floor. She stared at the dark hallway beyond her bedroom door, shadows shifting like restless smoke. She felt like a pair of eyes had followed her into the silence, pressing down on her chest. "You're imagining this," she said again, but her breath hitched and betrayed her. Jennifer slid her legs from the bed, her bare feet brushing the icy wooden floor. She flinched at the chill but forced herself to rise. Her body trembled with each hesitant step toward the door. She whispered, "Just the wind," though the sound of her own voice only deepened the dread. The kitchen crash replayed in her head, louder each time she imagined it. She touched the doorframe, steadying herself as though the house itself tilted beneath her weight. Her eyes strained to adjust to the darkness, catching faint shifting movements at the edge of her vision. "I can do this," she muttered, her pulse quickening as the hallway loomed like a black mouth ready to swallow her whole. The hallway stretched before Jennifer, each step echoing faintly as if the house listened to her movements. Her hands shook, arms hugging her body tight. The air was colder here, every breath misting faintly. A picture frame rattled softly on the wall, though no draft stirred. She whispered, "Mark," her voice breaking, calling for her brother though she knew he wasn't home. Silence pressed back like a suffocating blanket. Her throat dried as her eyes flickered from door to door, convinced something waited just behind. She felt the eyes again, invisible yet heavy, watching her from the unseen corners. Jennifer froze as the sound of soft footsteps echoed behind her. She spun quickly, eyes wide, but the hallway stretched empty. The silence grew heavier, pressing into her skull. She whispered, "Stop it," as though her words could drive the unseen presence away. Her legs weakened, but she forced herself onward, moving toward the kitchen where the crash had come from. The floorboards creaked beneath her, each groan sharp like a warning. She stopped again, breath caught, certain she heard a faint whisper of her name curling through the dark. Her chest tightened as she whispered back, "You're not real." Jennifer's footsteps carried her into the kitchen, though each step felt heavier, like walking into the throat of some great beast. The air smelled faintly of burnt metal, sharp and unnatural. A broken glass lay in the center of the floor, shards glimmering like tiny knives in the moonlight. She whispered, "It's just gravity," forcing her rational mind to answer the chaos. Yet the glass hadn't fallen from anywhere she could see. Cabinets stood closed, untouched. She crouched slowly, her knees trembling, and reached toward the shards. A low hum filled the silence, deep and vibrating through the walls. She drew back her hand quickly, her pulse racing. Her voice quivered as she said, "I know you're here." For a moment, her reflection in the kitchen window looked wrong, eyes too wide, face too pale. She jerked her head away, pressing her back to the counter, heart hammering like thunder in a storm. The silence grew unbearable, As Jennifer leaned against the counter, clutching her chest with one hand, she stared at the kitchen window, trying not to look directly at her reflection. The glass glowed faintly in the moonlight, but her mirrored image twisted, smiling when she did not. She gasped, stepping back quickly, her hand striking the sink with a metallic clang. "That's not me," she whispered, voice breaking under strain. The reflection's eyes glistened, brighter than they should, as if something peered out from behind her. Her breath fogged against the cold air inside, but the figure in the glass stood motionless. Her body shivered violently, panic bubbling into her throat. She slammed her eyes shut, whispering a prayer her grandmother had taught her. When she opened them again, the reflection looked normal, tired, and frightened. Still, she knew deep inside that she had not imagined what she saw. The floor creaked behind Jennifer, and her head snapped toward the sound. The kitchen doorway stood empty, yet the boards groaned as though pressed by invisible weight. She whispered, "Please stop," her throat dry and voice shaking. A shadow slid along the hallway wall, long and formless, moving against the grain of light. Jennifer staggered back, her heel crunching against broken glass. She winced but dared not look at her bleeding foot. The shadow stretched closer, reaching across the floor toward her. Her breathing grew frantic, chest heaving with shallow gasps. "You don't exist," she said louder now, desperate. Yet the shadow pulsed in answer, flickering like smoke caught in an unseen current. She reached for the kitchen drawer, fumbling for a knife, her fingers trembling against the cold handle. Her hand closed around the knife handle, pulling it free with a sharp scrape. The sound cut through the silence like a scream of steel. Jennifer gripped the blade tightly, though her hands shook violently. The shadow froze, as if waiting for her next move. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "I'm not afraid of you," though the tears on her cheeks betrayed her. The hum returned, deeper now, vibrating the glass and walls. She staggered, pressing her back harder against the counter for balance. The knife trembled in her hand, blade catching the moonlight in sharp flashes. The shadow shrank suddenly, retreating toward the hallway, then dissolved into the darkness. Jennifer gasped for breath, her chest aching, but her body remained frozen, as if the air itself had turned to stone. She whispered softly, "It's only beginning." Jennifer forced herself forward, knife still in hand, stepping cautiously toward the hallway. Each board creaked under her weight, but no shadow followed. The silence stretched too long, heavy as a coffin lid. Her foot left faint blood marks on the wooden floor as she limped onward. "I won't let you win," she whispered, though her voice sounded hollow, almost unconvincing. The hallway walls pressed tighter around her, their shadows shifting like restless arms. Her body ached with exhaustion, her mind clouded by dread. She thought of her brother Mark and wished he were here, though she would never admit her fear to him. At the end of the hallway, the door to the basement stood ajar, its darkness thicker than the rest. A faint draft slipped through, carrying a whisper that curled into her ear. "Jennifer." Jennifer stood before the basement door, her breath shallow, heart thudding like a drum. The air grew colder, seeping through the narrow crack. She whispered, "It wants me down there," though every instinct screamed to run. Her bare foot ached, blood drying against the wooden floor, each step forward leaving a faint mark of pain. She gripped the knife tighter, fingers cramping, but refused to loosen her hold. The draft from below smelled damp, metallic, and old, like rust and decay clinging to stone. The whisper of her name came again, curling around her like smoke. She pressed a trembling hand against the door, feeling it pulse as though alive. With a shaky breath, she said, "If I don't go, it will come for me." The basement stairs yawned open like a throat swallowing the light. Jennifer descended slowly, each step groaning beneath her weight. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Just the house settling," but she did not believe it. The darkness thickened around her, pressing close. A faint drip echoed from below, rhythmic and hollow. Her free hand traced the wall, fingers brushing against damp stone. The knife trembled in her grip, reflecting fragments of the pale moonlight behind her. Her body quivered with exhaustion, but she forced herself deeper into the suffocating black. The whisper came again, this time closer, brushing against her ear. She stumbled, clutching the railing, teeth clenched to keep from screaming. At the bottom, Jennifer paused, surrounded by damp stone walls and old boxes stacked high. The air felt ancient, thick with mildew and dust. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a shadow slipping behind a pile of crates. She whispered, "Show yourself," though her voice cracked with fear. The drip echoed louder, steady as a clock ticking away. Her chest heaved, lungs straining for breath, as if the air itself resisted her. The darkness seemed to throb, alive, waiting. A faint outline glimmered in the corner, 2 points of light resembling eyes. She froze, every muscle rigid, unable to move or look away. Her trembling hand lifted the knife higher, though she doubted it would matter against what lurked. The air thickened, pressing against her chest. She whispered, "Stay away from me," her tone breaking like glass. The eyes glimmered brighter, then vanished, leaving her staring into nothing. She staggered backward, nearly tripping over a crate. A sudden bang exploded as a box toppled over on its own, scattering old books across the floor. She cried out, stumbling back toward the wall, knife shaking wildly in her grip. Her breath came in ragged bursts, sharp and uneven. The basement seemed to pulse with every beat of her heart, as though the darkness itself inhaled with her fear. Jennifer's back hit the cold stone wall, her body trembling violently. She whispered, "I can't do this," though she forced herself to stay upright. A low laugh slithered through the dark, echoing like it came from every corner at once. Her eyes darted wildly, but nothing moved except shadows twisting unnaturally on the walls. Her foot throbbed, blood seeping slowly across the floor. She whispered, her brother's name, Mark, desperate, but only silence followed. The laughter returned, louder, mocking her weakness. Tears streamed down her face as she clenched the knife tighter. "You won't take me," she said through clenched teeth, though her voice shook with terror. The darkness stirred, closer now, circling. Jennifer stumbled from the basement, her knife still clutched tight, her body shaking with every breath. She slammed the door shut, pressing her back against it, but the wood pulsed faintly as if something pushed from the other side. She whispered, "Stay there," though she knew it would not listen. The hallway lights flickered, casting long streaks of shadows across the walls. Her mind begged for help, for someone to prove she wasn't losing control. She reached for her phone again, praying it would work. The screen flickered to life this time, faint glow painting her face, and she quickly dialed Mark. Her trembling voice whispered, "Please, answer." The call connected, and Mark's groggy voice answered, "Jennifer, what's wrong? It's past midnight." Her breath hitched as she whispered, "There's something here." Silence stretched before he sighed, his tone sharp with disbelief. "You're scaring yourself again," he said. She shook her head violently, tears filling her eyes. "No, Mark, it's real," she insisted. The line crackled, his voice breaking, "You have to calm down." Anger burned through her fear, frustration mixing with dread. She cried out, "Why won't you believe me?" But his silence lingered, heavy and dismissive. She felt more alone than ever, her heart cracking with betrayal. Jennifer pressed the phone tighter, her voice breaking. "Mark, please, it's watching me." His sigh deepened, tone cold. "You've been imagining this since the accident. You need sleep, not ghosts." The words cut deeper than the whispers in the dark. Her body trembled as she whispered, "You don't understand, it's real." But the line clicked dead, leaving only silence. The weight of rejection pressed on her chest, heavier than the shadows. She lowered the phone slowly, her reflection in the black screen looking broken. She whispered to herself, "Hell never believe me," before the sound of another creak echoed from the hallway. The hallway stretched ahead, darker than before, as though the shadows deepened after her brother's denial. Her breath quivered, shallow and sharp. She whispered, "It wants me alone," her words barely audible. A frame fell from the wall suddenly, glass shattering across the floor. She jumped back, clutching her knife closer. The portrait within showed her family, but the image warped, faces smudged by some unseen hand. Her own eyes in the photo seemed black, hollow sockets staring back at her. She staggered, nearly losing balance, whispering, "This isn't possible." Yet the photo remained twisted, proof that something was inside her home. Jennifer's sobs broke the silence as she clutched the broken frame, blood from her cut hand streaking the glass. She whispered, "It's inside already," her voice shaking. A shadow moved across the wall, smooth and deliberate, unaffected by the flickering light. She rose slowly, knife raised, her body trembling. "I won't let you win," she said, though her tone faltered. The shadow loomed taller, stretching until it swallowed the ceiling. The flickering bulb overhead sparked violently, plunging the hallway into near darkness. She gasped, her chest heaving, as the whisper came again, this time sharper, mocking, "Jennifer." Jennifer staggered into the living room, clutching her knife, her body trembling from exhaustion and dread. The air inside the house had grown heavier, pressing on her lungs as if each breath came through water. She whispered, "Why me?" But silence answered. A stack of old letters on the table caught her eye, yellowed and frayed with age. She reached out, hands shaking, and opened one. The handwriting was her mother's, but the words chilled her. "The eyes will come for Jennifer." Her blood turned cold as she read line after line, her name repeated like a curse. She whispered, "She knew," her voice breaking. Jennifer dropped the letter, her mind spiraling as the pages scattered across the floor. Each one carried her name, scrawled in desperate handwriting. She whispered, "She hid this from me," her throat raw. Memories of her mother's nervous glances and locked drawers flooded back. She realized the fear she carried had been planted long ago, a legacy hidden in silence. The whisper in the room deepened, curling through the air like a hiss. "She tried to protect you." Jennifer clutched her head, tears streaking her face. She cried, "No, she abandoned me." The letters rustled without wind, sliding across the floor as though pulled by unseen hands. Her breath shook as she lifted another letter, her hands trembling too much to steady it. The words blurred, but she read, "The eyes belong to our bloodline." Her chest constricted, the revelation stabbing deeper than fear. "It's in me," she whispered, voice quaking. She remembered her mother's sleepless nights, the way she locked every window and whispered prayers to shadows. Her family had lived with this curse, never telling her until it was too late. She cried, "Why didn't you warn me?" Her body collapsed against the table, forehead pressed against the wood. The whisper echoed, mocking, "Because you are chosen." The lamp flickered violently, plunging the room into alternating flashes of light and shadow. Jennifer jerked upright, clutching her knife and a handful of letters. Her voice broke as she shouted, "Leave me alone." The whisper swelled louder, layered with voices, some sounding like her mother, others like strangers. The walls shook, frames rattling against plaster. Her body quaked, knees weak as the sound filled every corner. She cried, "I won't carry this curse." Her words were met with a chilling laugh that rattled inside her skull. The letters lifted into the air, swirling like leaves in a storm. Jennifer's defiance cracked as the swirling letters collapsed onto the floor, scattered like ashes. Her chest heaved, sweat dripping down her pale skin. She whispered, "It was never watching the house. It was watching me." The truth pressed into her mind like a blade, undeniable and cruel. The curse was not in the walls, not in the shadows. It lived in her blood, bound to her soul. She staggered backward, hitting the wall, knife slipping slightly in her hand. The whisper returned, colder now, final. "You cannot escape what you are." Her scream tore through the silence, raw and desperate, echoing into the dark. The house groaned as if it knew Jennifer had learned the truth, and she felt the floor breathe beneath her soles. She lifted the knife, though it shook in her hand like a compass trapped in a storm. The lights dimmed to a bruised blue, and the walls seemed to lean closer. Jennifer said, "If you're in my blood, then come out and face me." A cold laugh slid along the ceiling and trickled down her spine. The air thickened until breathing scraped her throat. She stepped into the living room, and the letters stirred like dry leaves. The black window held a void that was not outside. Jennifer said, "You don't get to choose me anymore." A smear of shadow peeled from the corner and lengthened across the carpet. Her courage felt borrowed and fragile, yet it held. She thought of childhood nights when her mother prayed to the dark. Jennifer said, "I end it here," and the shadow rose like an uncoiling tide. The shadow rippled, and shapes like fingers pressed through as if a curtain separated worlds. Jennifer stepped closer until her breath fogged the cold that poured from it. Jennifer said, "Show me your face." The reply was a hush that tasted like iron. The dark split and revealed two lights that were not eyes but holes punched through night. She remembered the old line, the letters naming her by inheritance, and shame burned her cheeks. Jennifer said, "You fed on us because we believe." The lights widened with a patient hunger. The lamp popped and burst into threads of fire that died before they fell. She flinched but did not step back. Jennifer said, "I believe in ending you." The shadow extended an arm, the length of the room, and brushed her hair with freezing tenderness. She felt a memory lift from her skull, and rage answered where fear had lived. The presence leaned closer, and brought with it the sound of many clocks stopping. Jennifer felt her pulse stutter, but her will held like a nail in oak. She slid her injured foot and planted herself square. Jennifer said, "Take nothing else from me." The thing answered with a whisper in her mother's voice, tender and wrong. She almost broke, then saw the letters on the floor point like arrows toward the basement. The marks on the walls were a map she had refused to read. Jennifer said, "You were carved into this house by our silence." She moved, dragging the shadow with her like a hooked fish. The staircase yawned below, exhaling damp stone and old sorrow. Jennifer said, "Come on," and the dark followed, greedy and certain. She felt the house tilt as if the foundation turned to water, yet she kept descending. The basement accepted her like a memory it had been waiting to replay. Boxes slumped against stone, and damp hung heavy as a curtain. The shadow pooled near the far wall, where the oldest marks nested under paint. Jennifer said, "You live where we refuse to look." She sliced the blade across the plaster, exposing raw lines beneath. The room exhaled a smell of rust and rain. The lights upstairs died, and the house fell into a breathing dark. Jennifer said, "I'm not a door for you." The thing swelled, wearing the shape of grief, and reached with 100 soft hands. She lowered her head and walked through them, cold breaking across her skin like surf. Her knife found the heart of the marks, and plaster cracked like ice. Jennifer said, "End with me," and drove the steel into the foundation seam. The house shuddered as if something ancient unlatched inside the earth. A scream rose without air, vibrating bone and nail. Jennifer felt the knife heat in her palm, and light bled from the cut stone like dawn underwater. The shadow convulsed, thinning into threads that snapped one by one. Jennifer said, "You are not my inheritance," and pressed until the seam widened. Dust rained like gray snow and settled on her lashes. The void behind the eyes folded, pulling its hunger back through a keyhole of pain. The basement brightened to a bruised violet, then fell into stillness. Jennifer sagged to her knees, sobs shaking loose at last. Jennifer said, "I am still here," and the house answered with a long exhausted sigh, almost human, almost forgiven. Jennifer climbed from the basement, her legs weak and her hands coated in dust and dried blood. The house stood silent now, as if emptied of its breath. Her knife dragged against the stair rail, the metal ringing faintly. She whispered, "It's gone," though her voice cracked under doubt. The hallway smelled of smoke and stone, heavy with the weight of what she had done. Every frame on the wall leaned crooked, faces in the portraits blurred as if erased. She staggered toward the window and saw the night still waiting, rain streaking against the glass. Jennifer pressed her forehead to the cold pane and whispered, "I survived." Yet the silence felt less like victory and more like the pause before another storm. The phone on the table buzzed suddenly, breaking the silence. Jennifer's body jolted, her pulse racing. She limped toward it, knife still clenched, hand trembling as she reached. The caller ID glowed with her mother's name, though she had been gone for years. Her throat tightened as she whispered, "No, this isn't real." The buzzing grew louder, shaking the table as though demanding she answer. Against every instinct, she pressed accept. Static filled the room, then her mother's voice whispered, "Jennifer, it never leaves." Tears flooded her eyes, and she slammed the phone down. The silence afterward was heavier than before, suffocating, final. Jennifer collapsed into the old armchair, her body trembling violently. She whispered, "I ended it," though the words felt empty. The walls pressed closer, paint cracked from the vibrations below. Her reflection in the window stared back, but the eyes were darker, deeper, too knowing. She leaned forward, gripping the armrest, and whispered, "You're me." The reflection's lips parted into a slow grin that she had not made. Her chest seized as she screamed, throwing the knife at the glass. The window cracked, spiderwebbing, but the reflection remained untouched, still smiling. Jennifer buried her face in her hands, sobbing as the house listened. Her sobs slowed, leaving only silence and the hum of the storm outside. Jennifer rose slowly, her movements stiff, and walked toward the hallway mirror. She whispered, "If it lives in me, then I'll see it." Her pale reflection stared back, weary and broken. For a heartbeat, it seemed ordinary. Then the eyes shifted again, widening, swallowing the irises into void. The mirror shook violently, glass trembling in its frame. Jennifer raised her fist and struck it, shards scattering across the floor. Each shard caught her reflection, dozens of dark eyes staring up from broken angles. She screamed, stumbling back, her feet crunching over fragments. Jennifer sank to the floor, surrounded by shards of herself. Her breaths came ragged, and blood trickled from cuts on her hands. She whispered, "You can't have me," but the dozens of reflections whispered back, "We already do." The house grew quiet, too quiet, the storm outside muffled as though the world no longer reached her. One shard slid unnaturally across the floor, tilting to face her, its dark eyes blinking once. Her body froze, paralyzed with horror. The silence stretched until it was unbearable, then a final whisper curled from every broken piece. "We're still watching." Jennifer's scream tore through the house, but no one heard it.